Kid Rock was interviewed by Tucker Carlson a few days ago, and he said something about cancel culture that I actually thought was pretty important. So I want to play that for you. Listen.
Why haven't you been canceled? Like, people aren't allowed to say what they think. You are.
I am uncancelable.
Why's that?
Because I don't give a and I'm not in bed with any big corporate things at the end of the day. There's nobody I'm beholden to, no record companies, no corporate interests, no nothing. And you can't cancel me. I love it when they try. I'm like, yeah, let's have some fun.
Why aren't there more artists like that?
Because they're in bed with record companies and, corporate deals and structures at every level. And, it's, and if someone finds a way to get me a little bit here and there, I'll find another way around it.
You never see artists talk like that. They seem very easy to intimidate. At what point did you realize, like, you're just not going to be intimidated?
Day one.
Really?
I think I crawled out of the womb with both middle fingers in the air.
So he's right that there are, it's an important point, that there are two ways to get canceled. And there's really only two. There are only two ways for it to happen. Two kind of categories. It's just, unfortunately, a great many people fall into one of these categories or both. So either, in order to be canceled, you have to be beholden to corporate interests, as a great many people are. I mean, if you work for a big giant corporation, then in that way you're beholden to them because you work for them, through no fault of your own. I mean, you have to have a job, but so that's one way. If you're kind of at the mercy of giant corporations, then that's one way to get canceled. The other way is if you care what the mob thinks about you. And that's why we see people who wouldn't seem to really be beholden to anyone. There's no reason why they need to be beholden. Rich and famous people got all the money in the world, and even if they get canceled by corporations, they're not really canceled. They're still going to be rich. They're still going to be famous. They could go out on their own and do their own thing, but they still apologize and crumble and everything because although they're not really beholden to corporate interests, or maybe they are a little bit, the bigger issue is that they care what the mob thinks. So either you care what the mob thinks or you're beholden to corporate interests, or both. And for a lot of people, it's both, especially a lot of celebrities and so on. The answer is both there. So if you want to be uncancelable, that's the way to do it. Now, unfortunately, lots of people are not in the spot that Kid Rock is in, where you could be wealthy and all of that, and you don't need to go to any corporation or anyone looking for a job. You can kind of do your own thing. So not everyone's in that spot. But at least one thing that everybody can adopt is the second part, which gives you some cover anyway in cancel culture, which is to stop caring what the mob thinks to begin with. A lot of the cancellations that happen, it's really a self-cancellation. The mob gives the gun to the canceled person and just convinces them to pull the trigger against themselves, metaphorically. And eventually we get to the point with cancel culture where it's not so metaphorical, and that happens quite often. So you got to get to a point where it just doesn't mean anything to you, and you realize that, first of all these labels that are thrown at you, anytime you're canceled, it's always going to be under the guise of racism, sexism, transphobia, whatever. And you get to the point where you realize that these labels don't mean anything at all. I mean, after all, they're being thrown at you by people who, as we saw, even on the Supreme Court, or who want to be on the Supreme Court, can't define a word like woman. So they certainly, an abstract kind of concept like transphobia, that doesn't mean anything. And that really doesn't mean anything. So who cares if you're called that? And most of the people in the mob who are coming after you and attacking you and insulting you, they don't actually care that much. You don't mean anything to them. This is all a game to them. This is a power game, power struggle. They want to impose their will on you. Not much different from the bully in the playground. This is a playground bully mentality, but nationwide, formed into a mob, ideologically driven. Listen, hit that subscribe button right now. Do it right now. I thank you for your compliance. It is somewhat appreciated.